The last bell echoed through Gracefield Primary as students poured onto the Lagos streets. Laughter bounced off puddles left by afternoon rain. Among the crowd walked Clara Grant, 12 years old, uniform slightly wrinkled, books pressed tight to her chest. She waved at her friends, then started the long walk home through Ojota Park, shortcut of shortcuts. Her mother always said, "Clara, avoid lonely corners," but homework waited and the sun was sliding down too fast. Halfway across the park, she saw movement near the empty swings. 2 men in dark shirts dragging a boy her age, maybe 13, still in his school uniform. His tie hung loose, face red from struggle. "Let me go, please," he yelled, kicking. Clara stopped breathing. For 4 heartbeats she hid behind a tree, mind racing. Then she whispered to herself, "Do something or he's gone." She ran to the nearest vendor stand, grabbed a broken broom handle and charged. "Leave him alone," she shouted. One man spun, startled. She swung the stick with all her strength. It cracked against his forearm. The boy twisted, freeing himself, and pushed at the other man. The kidnappers cursed, one limping as they fled toward a waiting bike. Lagos noise swallowed their retreat, leaving only 2 trembling children in the park's fading light. The boy collapsed to the ground, panting. Clara's knees shook. The men bolted into the distance, disappearing down the dusty street. Clara stood shaking, breath wild in her chest, still clutching the broken stick. The boy stared at her, half terrified, half amazed. And before we continue with this breathtaking story, I want you to subscribe right now, tap that like button, and in the comments section tell us the country you're watching from. Go ahead, grab your popcorn, because what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew about courage, friendship, and love. Now back to the story. Clara's heart still thundered as she pulled the frightened boy toward safety. "Are you hurt?" she asked. He looked up, eyes sharp grey, tears glittering. "I don't think, I just thank you." "Quick, let's go before they come back," she said. She took his hand, it was cold and small like hers. They ran down dusty lanes till she stopped at a narrow gate painted blue. "This is my house. We'll stay here till my mum comes." Inside, the one-room home smelled of soap and stew. Clara fetched water, trembling still. "Drink." He gulped, silent. When her mother, Madeline, returned from the market and saw the strange boy, she froze. "Lord, what happened?" Clara spoke fast, words tripping, telling everything. Madeline listened, then crouched before the boy. "You're safe now. What's your name, dear?" "Ethan," he whispered. "Ethan Parker." "And where are your parents, Ethan Parker?" I don't know. They took my bag, my phone, everything." His lower lip quivered. Madeline sighed. "We'll find them. For now, you're staying here." That night when power cut out, candles turned the small room gold. The rain started again. Ethan sat on the mat, watching Clara flip through her lesson notes. "You fight like a movie star," he said quietly. "You scream like one," she shot back, smiling despite exhaustion. "Where'd you learn to hit like that?" "My brothers used to mock fight before they left town. I watched." He laughed, the first genuine sound since the chaos. They ate rice, whispered jokes until sleep claimed them both. From the corner, Madeline watched their heads leaning against each other, praying the morning would bring answers. Morning came with police questions. Madeline reported everything, officers promised to search. But Lagos traffic eats investigations. Hours became days, no news. So Ethan stayed, helping wash dishes, sweeping, following Clara to buy bread. He loved the simplicity, neighborhood chatter, laughter, stew on the fire. One afternoon they sat by the doorway, feet swinging above the steps. Ethan turned something in his hand, a small silver necklace with an oval pendant. "My mum gave me this," he said to give it only to someone brave enough to protect me if I ever got lost. He looked up. "That's you." Her eyes widened. "I can't take it." "Do, please. Maybe if we never see each other again, it'll help you remember I was real." Clara hesitated, then clasped it around her neck. The pendant was cool, carved with 2 letters, EP. "You're sure your parents will find you?" she asked, almost a whisper. "They will," he said, voice small. "Dad owns some company in Ikja. I heard them talking before school." Their week together passed in small adventures. They did homework side by side, shared roasted corn, argued over whose turn it was to wash plates. Lagos was loud outside, but their room carried a secret stillness, a friendship growing against fear's memory. On the 7th morning, a black car pulled up outside. A man in uniform leapt out with 2 police officers. A woman ran forward before they could speak. "Ethan," she cried, grabbing him. "Mum," he shouted back and hugged her tight. Madeline stood nearby, touched and sad at once. Clara hovered behind her, holding her school bag, staring at the reunion like a dream ending. Ethan's mother thanked them endlessly, scribbled contacts, promised rewards they politely refused. Clara kept silent, eyes on the ground. As the car idled to leave, Ethan ran back. "Clara." She turned. He took her hand, squeezed tight. "Don't ever take off that necklace, okay? It's our promise. When we meet again, I'll recognize you before you even speak." She nodded, throat too tight for reply. And then he was gone, leaving tire marks on the wet road and an empty hush behind. That night, Clara touched the pendant, watching its silver catch candlelight. In her mind replayed the week, his laughter, his fear, the tiny comfort of not being alone. She looked out the window toward the city lights. "One day," she whispered, "we'll meet again, I'll show you I made it too." The wind rattled against the window frame, carrying a new sound, hope sharpening itself into destiny. 10 years later, the city had changed its face again. Lagos grew taller, louder, busier, full of glass towers that caught the sun and turned it into gold. Across the street from Eco Bridge, a skyscraper glittered with the letters EP Ventures. Beneath them, a banner, now recruiting bright graduates. Clara Grant, 22, stood at the gate clutching a neat brown envelope. Her blouse was pressed, her shoes scuffed clean. Around her neck, hidden under the collar, the faint glint of a small silver necklace. She ran her thumb over the letters stamped on the pendant, EP. Same as the company's name. Of course, she told herself, coincidence. Lagos is full of coincidences. Still, her pulse jumped. "This is for you, necklace," she whispered. "Maybe today you earn your meaning." But then she joined the queue of applicants stretching along the sidewalk. Up in the boardroom on the 40th floor, Ethan Parker turned away from the window. 10 years had replaced his boyish face with sharp lines and quiet authority. The company he'd inherited after his father's death had grown from one warehouse to a skyline. He adjusted his watch, half listening as his assistant, Thomas, read through the day's schedule. Final batch of interviews today, entry-level applicants for the communications division. Ethan nodded, bored. "Let's finish before lunch." "Sir," Thomas said, lowering his voice, "press requested a photo for your 10-year anniversary as CEO. You sure you don't want the necklace?" Ethan glanced at his desk drawer where a plain chain rested. He hadn't worn it in years. "Not today," he said. "It's just metal now." He didn't explain how it mostly felt like absence, the memory of a small brave girl who'd once swung a stick for him in a muddy park and vanished from his life. Downstairs, as the applicants filed in, Clara's turn came. She entered the interview hall, palms damp. 2 panelists sat beside a tall man in a dark suit who looked like he never ran out of time. "Name?" he asked, voice even. "Clara Grant," she said. He raised his eyes from her file and met hers. For a second, his professional mask slipped, just a flicker, but enough to make her breath catch. Somewhere deep inside, recognition stirred but refused to form words. He saw in her face something hauntingly familiar, the curve of the smile, the quiet confidence. Thomas continued with routine questions about communication strategy and college awards, while Ethan watched the small silver chain peeking from her shirt collar. "You have something shining under your collar," Thomas said politely. "Metal, no jewelry allowed during interviews." "Oh," Clara quickly tucked it away. Her fingers trembled. Ethan's heartbeat skipped. Only one object he remembered shone that way. When the interviews ended and the applicants left, he said quietly, "Thomas, keep her files separate." "Yes, sir. Is she special?" "Could be," Ethan said, still staring at the door she'd walked through. Later that evening, at Yarba Market, Clara treated herself to suya and carried it home through noisy streets. Her best friend, Lydia, sat waiting on the stoop, grinning. "So, job hunter, how did it go?" "Fine," Clara said, collapsing beside her. The boss looked familiar somehow. Familiar like ex-boyfriend familiar or deja vu familiar. Clara laughed, neither, just strange. He asked nothing, but it felt like he knew me. Lydia pointed at the necklace. Girl with your obsessions, anytime someone looks at you, you start imagining destiny. Maybe destiny likes me back, Clara teased. Maybe destiny needs to pay rent, Lydia replied. They laughed together until the night grew cool. The call came 2 days later. Miss Grant. Her heart kicked. Yes. This is EP Ventures. Congratulations, you've been shortlisted for the trainee program. Start Monday. Clara covered her mouth, suppressing a shout. Thank you so much. She hung up and did a little dance. Lydia clapped from the couch. Destiny paid rent. Monday she woke before dawn. Lagos traffic snaked as always. Buses groaned, commuters argued cheerfully with conductors. By the time Clara stepped into EP Ventures' glass lobby, she felt small and determined all at once. The first week was training, corporate manners, workflow, meetings she barely understood. She worked hard, often first in, last out. Ethan watched from a distance. Each day he told himself are you the girl from Ojota Park? Do you remember the rain, the candlelight, the week I lived in your world? Each day he stopped short, afraid if he asked and was wrong, the illusion would vanish. One evening, Clara stayed late to file reports. The office was quiet, rain faint on the window panels. As she bent to shut her desk drawer, the pendant slipped free, catching a streak of lightning. Ethan entered silently behind her, documents in hand. The flash of silver froze him. He stepped closer. Where did you get that necklace? Clara startled, spinning around. Sir, I'm sorry, I forgot to remove it. He didn't blink. Just answer me, where did you get it? Her throat went dry. Long time ago, a boy gave it to me after an accident. What boy? His voice dropped almost to a whisper now. In Ojota, 2 men tried to take him. He stayed in our house till his parents found him. He said his name was, she faltered, Ethan Parker. The silence that followed carried every echo of 10 missing years. Ethan took a slow step forward. Say that again. She looked up, eyes wide. Ethan Parker. He exhaled, half laugh, half disbelief. So it's you, Clara. She froze, gripping the edge of her desk. You remember my name. I've remembered nothing else. For a moment they simply stared, thunder rolling outside. Clara touched the necklace, mind spinning. You own this place. He nodded. Built it after Dad died. But all this, he gestured around the gleaming office. None of it made me feel real until right now. Her voice shook between tears and laughter, and I was scared to even apply. He smiled, older now, steadier. You still save me from mistakes. You saved me once. Maybe fate owed us round 2. They laughed then, softly, unsure what else to do. Outside, the storm faded, leaving Lagos washed clean again. Inside, 2 people stood in the reflection of a glass tower, looking at a future rewriting itself in real time. The following morning, Lagos woke under a sky the colour of aluminium. Buses blared, Danfos screamed at junctions, and the usual wave of chaos moved through the city. Inside the neat compound of EP Ventures, everything was glossy and composed, except the 2 hearts now learning how to beat in the same building again. Clara Grant sat at her desk, clutching a cup of coffee that had gone cold 15 minutes ago. She kept replaying the previous night. You still save me. You saved me once. Each time she thought of his voice saying her name, her stomach tightened. Across the hall, Ethan Parker tapped through emails but read none. 10 years he'd built walls of money, success, routine, and one face tore them down in a heartbeat. That afternoon, he called her to his office under a calm pretext. I'd like you to join the strategy team on a new project. When she entered, the room felt heavier than sunlight could handle. She kept her tone crisp, professional. Sir, you requested to see me. He gestured to the seat opposite. Ethan, he said quietly. Not sir. She swallowed. Old habits die hard. Maybe keep this one alive, he said, smiling. Then his voice softened. Do you really remember everything from then, the park, my mother showing up, the rain that night? Clara's eyes flicked to the skyline through the glass wall. Every second, Mum joked I'd brought home trouble and adopted him for a week. Her smile trembled. She loved feeding you. I've never tasted jollof that good again, he said. And that candle we used when power cut out. I still remember the shadows dancing on the wall. A silence stretched between them, sweet but strange. Then she remembered herself. "We should talk about this new project, Mr. Ethan." He nodded, returning to his chair. "A youth tech program. I wanted someone who understands real people, not just graphs. You fit." "Thank you," she said, caught between pride and panic. Days turned into rhythm. Morning briefings, late meetings, guarded glances. By week's end, tabloids printed photos of Ethan shaking hands with ministers, headlines reading "Young CEO expands empire." Clara watched from her cubicle. The man behind those headlines seemed miles away from the boy who once borrowed her school sweater and laughed over burnt plantain. At lunch, her colleague Lydia Benson poked her ribs. "You keep staring at the boss like he owes you change." Clara blinked. "I'm just surprised he's this humble. Everyone says CEOs act like robots." "Maybe you upgraded his software," Lydia teased. Clara smiled, shaking her head. "It's nothing like that." But deep down, she wasn't sure anymore. Ethan finally broke the growing tension one evening after a conference call. "Hungry?" he asked when he found her still at her desk. "I have noodles," she said. "Come with me, I promise real food, not student survival kits." She tried protesting, but found herself trailing him to the rooftop canteen reserved for executives. The view stole her breath, Lagos stretching endless and golden beneath the setting sun. "You're quiet," Ethan said as they sat. "Trying to take this in, you live above the world." He looked out too. "Some days it feels like the world forgot me up here." She turned, startled by the honesty. He smiled faintly. "When Dad died, I poured myself into work. The company grew, the calls came, but it never quieted the noise inside. Sometimes I still wake hearing that boy scream in Ojota Park." Clara felt the breath hitch in her throat. "You don't have to remember that anymore. You walked out of it alive." "You pulled me out of it alive," he said, voice low. "Your courage built everything I became." She didn't know what to do with that sentence. She toyed with her fork and said, "I didn't build this glass tower. You did." "Bricks are easy, fear is harder," he murmured. Rain began to slip down the windows. Lightning flashed, bright and momentary. Clara shivered, though the air was warm. Ethan leaned forward. "Clara, tell me something. Why did you keep the necklace all those years?" She smiled, small and wistful. "It was never about a gift. It was a memory of proving to myself that I could be brave once. I didn't want to forget the girl who ran into a fight instead of away from it." He paused, truly seeing her. "She's still there." She tried to laugh it off. "These days she fights only unpaid bills." He shook his head. "Bills can't hide fire." For a heart-thumping second, silence wrapped around them again, flirtation glowing like a candle flame. Then her phone buzzed, breaking the moment. "Sorry," she said quickly. It was her landlord's reminder. Real life returned. She stood, gathering her bag. "Thank you for dinner, Ethan." He nodded, but his eyes followed her until the elevator doors slid shut. That night, rain kept falling on the city. Ethan went home to a house too quiet and opened the drawer where the twin of her necklace rested. He had reforged it back then, wearing it rarely, but tonight he slipped it over his neck and looked at his reflection. Different man, same longing. He whispered to the empty room, "You found me again, but what if I ruin it now?" Across town, Clara sat by her small window, necklace in her palm, city lights blinking below. She thought about her mother, about the week-long miracle that first brought Ethan to her door, and about how little choices back then had shaped both their fates. Somewhere deep down she already knew what the pendant meant now. It was no longer just a token, but a key about to unlock everything she wasn't ready to feel. She whispered into the hum of rain, "Don't let this be another coincidence. Let it be a beginning." The next week dawned hot and weary, the kind of Lagos morning that wrung sweat out of pavement stones. In the lobby of EP Ventures, the cold marble gleamed beneath people's shoes, heels clacking like impatient hearts. Clara Grant walked in with her files pressed to her chest. She could feel eyes sliding toward her, whispers trailing behind like invisible threads. By lunchtime, she learned why. 2 junior analysts were hunched over a phone, their voices carried. "Look, that's him walking with her. The boss never eats with anyone but now. So she's his special girl." Clara kept walking, head high, though her ears burned. Upstairs, Ethan Parker sat behind his desk scanning a new headline on his screen. "Young CEO mentors rising female graduate, closer than you'd think." He cursed softly under his breath. The article had used a grainy shot from the rooftop dinner. He picked up the phone. Thomas, who leaked that picture. We're checking, sir. Should I call PR? Not yet, I'll handle it. When he opened his office door, Clara was already there, expression tight. Was that your idea of publicity? She asked, not quite managing to keep her voice steady. Ethan sighed. No, you know how media feeds on anything new. You and I walking in the same frame, it's a circus. Clara folded her arms. I worked hard for this position. 1 week's rumor and everyone staring like I bribed the sky. He met her gaze, then let them stare. You earned this job before you even knew my name again. Her mouth opened, closed. You don't get it, you live above talk. Down there talk becomes truth. He stepped closer. So what are we now, Clara? Just employer and employee? That's all we can be, she said quickly. At least here. The word sliced something unseen between them. She turned before he could answer and walked out, shoes sharp against the marble. By late afternoon, the office buzzed with the quiet hum of awkward curiosity. Clara buried herself in projects, determined to drown gossip under deadlines, but every message chimed like static. At 4, Lydia called from her own cubicle. Girl, I warned you, rich men come with rich noise. Please, Clara muttered, he's just my boss. You're repeating that too often to sound convincing, Lydia replied. Clara rubbed her temples. I need peace, not theories. That evening, thunder rolled in with the 5 p.m. traffic. Clara drove home through rain that blurred neon lights into a smear of red and white. By the time she climbed the stairs to her apartment, she felt the week's tension crumbling her bones. A knock came just as she changed into soft clothes. She opened the door to find Ethan standing in the hallway, rain misting his shoulders. I needed to talk, he said. You shouldn't be here. I know, but I also know you won't pick my calls. She sighed, stepped aside reluctantly. 2 minutes before my neighbors start imagining things. He smiled faintly, stepping in. The tiny sitting room felt even smaller with him inside. Why didn't you tell me about your rent trouble? He asked. Her head snapped up. How do you know? Accounting flagged a paycheck reduction form. You deferred half your salary to cover your scholarship bond. She crossed her arms. That's my concern, not yours. He looked at her gently. It is when you skip meals just to keep that promise. Don't mistake pride for starvation, she said dryly. I'm managing. Always managing, always surviving, he said quietly. When do you just live? His voice softened the air. For a moment, the only sound was rain on rooftops. Then he said, you still wear it. Clara blinked. What? The necklace. She touched it instinctively. It reminds me of when courage was simple. He drew the twin chain from his shirt. We're still wearing pieces of the same story. She stared at both pendants glittering under weak light, 2 halves of memory suspended above new worlds. Ethan, please, she whispered. Don't complicate what's already hard. Maybe it's the simplicity that scares us, he said. Her breath hitched. I fought too hard to stand here on my own. Don't make everyone think it's because of you. Then let me prove it isn't, he said quickly. Take charge of the new campaign, full lead, publicly credited. Clara frowned. You'll take the backlash for showing favoritism. He nodded. Let them talk, you'll silence them with the work itself. She studied him for a long time. You trust me that much? I owe you more than trust, he said. My whole life survives because you didn't walk away years ago. The rain outside grew harsher. Inside, the words hung gentle but solid. Okay, she said finally, voice barely audible. I'll do it. He smiled, relief softening his face. Good, and stop skipping dinner. I'll add that to my project list, she muttered, lips twitching. When she opened the door to see him out, they stood too close, memories vibrating between them like electricity. Then he stepped back, bowing his head slightly. Good night, Clara. Good night, Ethan. The next morning, new posters lined the company's digital boards. Project Hope, Youth Tech Empowerment, directed by Clara Grant. Her inbox exploded with congratulations and polite surprises. Some colleagues even apologized for their earlier whispers. But success came carrying new eyes, sharper than before. At noon break, a man from the investors group approached her. Miss Grant, you must be quite important to Mr. Parker. People say you two share a history. She smiled coolly. We share the same goals, good work and results. Well, he said with a wink, goals bring people close. She turned away before her blush betrayed her fury. Late that evening, Lena, the receptionist, whispered, Madam HR is calling all staff for a short briefing. Something about proper workplace boundaries. Seems your success has them scared. Clara bit down a sigh. When wealth and gender mix, power always finds gossip to coin from it. She spent the night writing proposals under her desk lamp, vowing silently, if they judge me by shortcuts, I'll drown them in excellence. Across town, Ethan watched the same rain fall, necklace warm between his fingers. This time he wasn't thinking of rescue. He was thinking of risk, the kind of risk where a heart forgets the border between gratitude and love. He whispered, she saved me once. Now I just hope I don't hurt her by saving her back. 3 months later, EP Ventures was noisier, braver and busier than ever. Posters of Project Hope, Youth Tech hung in the building halls, each one stamped with Clara Grant's name. On most mornings she barely had time for breakfast before phone calls and interns filled her desk with questions. From his glass-walled office, Ethan Parker watched her work the way an artist watches a finished painting, half admiring, half terrified to touch it. She had proved him right in every way. Sponsors signed up, the press praised her strategy, and for a few weeks even the gossip had gone quiet. Until the rival appeared. Ryan Cole, a director from another firm, smiled with too many teeth. He, once been Ethan's classmate and business competitor, famous for charm that cut like glass, his company wanted the same government contract Project Hope was eyeing. One afternoon, he visited the Hamilton Tower for a collaboration meeting. He shook Ethan's hand too hard and turned his gaze on Clara longer than politeness allowed. So this is the miracle strategist everyone keeps whispering about. Clara smiled politely. Just doing my job, sir. She's being modest, Ryan said to Ethan. Smart move hiring her. People love her from the street to the sweet story. Clara's smile cooled. Stories only matter if they're true. Ryan chuckled, pretending not to notice the sting. Before the meeting ended, he slipped Ethan a comment loud enough for her to hear. People will talk either way, Ethan. Better keep business away from personal nights. Clara gathered her files, cheeks tight. Ethan's eyes flashed, but he said nothing. That evening she stayed late again, reviewing contracts. When she finally packed her bag, Ryan was waiting near the elevators. Miss Grant, coffee, just to clear the air. She glanced at the time. Air seems clear enough, Mr. Cole. You dislike me already. I dislike noise, she said, pressing the elevator button. He smirked. Noise keeps companies alive. Not the good ones. The doors slid closed before he could reply. 2 days later, tabloids struck again. Scandal brewing, employees' secret ties with CEO raise ethics questions. The story twisted every rooftop photo, every smile, every rumor back into one burning accusation. By noon, the company's stock had dipped. Reporters camped outside the gate. Employees whispered over lunch trays. Clara spent the day with her phone off, her body running on borrowed courage. When Ethan called her upstairs, she expected fury. What she found instead was quiet. He stood by the window, sleeves rolled, jaw tight. You read it? Yes. They're using Ryan's network to push it. He wants the contract sabotaged. She nodded once, then let me resign, end the noise. He turned sharply. What? If I go, headlines die in a week. You think I climbed this high to let parasites decide who belongs here? I think you worked too hard to lose it all over me, she said softly. He moved closer, voice low. This company stands because you gave it back its heart. I'm not letting them poison that. Her throat tightened. Ethan, do you trust me? She hesitated, then whispered, yes, then stay. The following morning he held a press conference. Flashbulbs burst like fireworks. I built this company to stand for courage, Ethan said firmly. MS Grant represents that. Our history began with integrity, it continues with it. We do not answer lies with silence. When he stepped back from the microphones, the murmurs softened. One journalist asked, so the rumors of romance false? He smiled faintly, too childish to answer, too private to deny. Either way, they end here. Clara watched from the doorway, heart trembling, not at his words, but at the calm strength behind them. That evening he found her in the project room, surrounded by charts and reports. "You didn't have to defend me like that," she said without looking up. "I wasn't defending you, I was correcting the story." She laughed weakly. "Same thing." "No," he said, stepping closer. "Defending you would mean you're separate. You're my team." She looked up, and that's all. His expression softened. "It's what the world demands, maybe not what my heart wants." The silence between them pulsed again, heavy with the memory of everything unsaid. She broke it first. "The heart doesn't sign company policies, Ethan." "I know," he said quietly, "but someday it might sign a vow." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a message. "Mum's old hospital reports dispute uncovered, urgent." Her breath caught. "My mother." "Yes, the clinic called," he said. "They found something about her treatment, records missing back then." The echo of her mum's death years ago returned sharp and sudden. "Why now?" "I asked a private auditor to review her case. You deserved closure," he admitted. "They just got results tonight." Her eyes widened. "And you didn't tell me." "I wanted to be sure before hurting you again." "So you looked into my mother without asking," she said, stepping back, voice cracking between gratitude and rage. "Clara," she shook her head. "How many times must I remind you I'm not your project to fix?" Then she left, tears blurring the floor tiles until the elevator swallowed her whole. Alone, Ethan slammed his fist against the desk. "I was trying to help," he muttered to the empty room. Outside, the city spun again, sirens, vendors, thunder far off. Down on the street, Clara walked fast through the drizzle, clutching the necklace under her collar. Every light in the city seemed too bright, every hope too fragile. She whispered, "I wanted to chase dreams, not open wounds." At her apartment, she opened the envelope he'd sent earlier that week, an award nomination letter for Project Hope bearing her name. The last line caught her breath, to be recommended by Mr. Ethan Parker himself. She sank onto the couch, tears slipping free. "Why do caring people hurt this much?" she murmured. Across town, Ethan stared at his own copy of a different document, medical negligence findings showing that years ago, a junior doctor at the same hospital had been bribed to bury poor patients' files for cash. Among those files was Madeline Grant. He whispered into the thick night, "It wasn't just fate, someone took her time." Somewhere below that whisper, fate stirred again, ready to tangle courage with justice. Dawn crept over a tense city. In every window of EP Ventures, light flickered early. Papers stacked high on desks, legal teams whispered in corners, and inside the top-floor office, Ethan Parker stared at a single folder labeled Grant Medical Case. He had read it 10 times already. Each line screamed corruption, hospital funds rerouted, low-income patients neglected, nurses silenced with money. Madeline Grant's name ran through it all like a ghost thread. He closed the file, breathing hard. If he published the evidence, the scandal could collapse half a network of investors, including some who had built his company. Still, his heart had made up its mind. Across the city, Clara Grant didn't sleep. She sat by her window, city lights fading into a pale grey morning. Her mind replayed Ethan's words, "I wanted to be sure before hurting you again." Beneath anger, she felt something else, fear of losing the only person who had ever fought for her as fiercely as she'd fought for everyone else. Her phone vibrated. One message, "Ethan, come to the Lighthouse Cafe during lunch, I need you to see something." She typed a short reply, coming before she could talk herself out of it. At noon, the sky shimmered with heat. The cafe overlooked Lagos Lagoon. Gulls circled lazily overhead. Ethan was waiting with the same folder that had kept him awake. "I know you didn't want me in your past," he began, voice steady, "but your mum's story is tied to a bigger lie. I can expose it, I will." Clara frowned, sitting slowly. "Expose how?" "Public report with evidence. It could shut down 3 hospitals and a private trust. It'll cause chaos, but it will clear her name." "And destroy your investors," she said quietly. "Half your company depends on that trust." His jaw tightened. "I can rebuild a company, you can't rebuild lost truth." The words hit her chest like thunder. "You'd risk everything for her?" she asked. "For you," he said simply. Silence folded around them. Wind rustled nearby umbrellas. In that stillness, something fierce and tender passed between them, an understanding that love sometimes looked like war. 2 weeks later, the world was noise again. News flashed across screens. CEO Ethan Parker files case against Health Consortium, alleges decade-long neglect of patients. Headlines exploded, stocks dropped, angry calls poured in, board members demanded explanations. Through it all, Clara stood beside him during interviews, silent and calm as arrows flew. At one press briefing, a reporter shouted, "Mr. Parker, why take a loss this size? Who are you protecting?" Ethan met the cameras squarely. "A woman who once sold pastries to buy her daughter's dreams," he said, "and every patient like her, that, who?" The room went still, cameras flashed like lightning. By the end of the week, both of them were exhausted. The company bled money, investors fled. Yet at night in the quiet office, Clara whispered, "You kept your promise, truth over comfort." He smiled wearily. "You kept yours, standing beside me when everything shook." She asked softly, "Any regrets?" He looked down at the necklace glinting from her collar, "Only that it took me this long to say what it meant." She watched as he pulled from his pocket the matching pendant he'd worn again since the discovery. Their two halves gleamed under the desk light, reflections merging like memories finally aligned. 10 years ago, Ethan said, "I gave you this necklace hoping you'd remember me. Now I want you to keep it so I'll never forget what courage looks like." Her voice broke. "And what does it look like?" "Like you that day in the park," he said. "Like you every day since." Weeks rolled by, the court hearings began. Ethan's testimony rattled the city, arrests followed. Though EP Ventures suffered, its employees rallied, proud of what their company now represented. Clara continued leading Project Hope, focusing on building clinics for children in poor districts. The one she named Madeline Health Center opened under a clear sky, with Ethan applauding from the crowd. After the ceremony, as evening spread gold over Lagos, he found her standing alone by the shore. "You did it," he said. "Your mum would be proud." Clara turned, tears glowed in her eyes but didn't fall. "We did it," she corrected. Wind tugged at their clothes. For a long time they just watched the waves, both knowing what was about to be spoken. Ethan finally said it. "All those years I searched for wealth, but you were the only richness I needed. Stay with me, Clara." She laughed through her tears. "You always sound like a movie ending." "Then let's make it real." He reached into his pocket and held out a small silver ring set with a tiny blue stone. "It's not diamonds, just something honest." She gazed at it speechless, then whispered, "Yes." Months later, the company stabilized with new investors who valued integrity over shadow profits. Project Hope turned into a foundation serving hospitals across Lagos. Clara ran it. Ethan oversaw everything else, his public speeches now full of warmth instead of business cold precision. On their wedding day, clouds threatened rain, then cleared just as they exchanged vows in a small garden behind the Madeline Health Center. When he slid the ring onto her finger, he said, "You saved me twice, from fear then from forgetting how to care." She smiled through shining tears, "And you reminded me that bravery is bigger when it's shared." Applause rose around them, friends, colleagues, Lydia waving hardest near the back. But for Clara, sound blurred into one soft truth humming through her heart, the same rhythm that began years ago in Ojota Park, when two children discovered courage under grey sky. That night, sitting on the balcony of their modest new home, they watched the city lights dance on the lagoon. Laughter from distant bars tangled with the whisper of waves. Clara leaned against his shoulder, tracing the necklace around her throat, the pendant now repaired and bright. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't gone through that park?" she asked. He smiled. "Then the world would still be waiting for its best story." She glanced up. "Our story?" He nodded. "The one about a little girl who refused to run away and taught a lost boy how to build something worth living for." They sat in content silence, thunder far off, a lullaby more than a warning. Below, the lights of Lagos shimmered on the water, alive, restless, endless. Above them, the sky stretched wide and open, carrying the first calm their hearts had ever truly earned. "Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story." On the screen you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.